Hey everyone, it's Saoirse, and today I want to talk about The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. I think I've talked about a Murakami book once or twice before. I've read quite a few of his books, but mostly before I started this channel. And the thing I love about him is that, excuse me, he always finds a way to surprise the reader, even though another thing I love about him is that he tends to write kind of the same story over and over and over again, and I really love that because I do that too, and it always makes me nervous, like, am I going to be successful as a writer if I just keep writing the same story? Well, he gets away with it, and I mean, this character even has the same name as a character in his other book. That's how much he gets away with it. And I just love it how he works through a lot of the same themes in different stories. I saw this thing once that said, you know it's a Murakami book if there's a missing wife, a missing cat, a Tokyo everyman, etc., etc., and this has all of those things. So this was published in 1997, which is weird because as I was reading it the whole time, for some reason I thought it was like 2018. I don't know why. And it's set in the 80s in Tokyo. And this was also translated by J. Rubin. And you know how I feel about translated books. I'm so frustrated I can't read the original. But he did a great job, and I think they tend to work together, Murakami and his translator. So we can rest assured that it's probably all what he intended it to be. So I'm just going to point out a few things I liked in here. Things that made me think, and if I'm going to spoil anything, I'll say spoiler, but I'll just read you the back real quick. In a Tokyo suburb, a young man named Toru Okada searches for his wife's missing cat, and then for his wife as well, in another world beneath the city's placid surface. As these searches intersect, he encounters a bizarre group of allies and antagonists. Gripping, prophetic, and suffused with comedy and menace, this is an astonishingly imaginative detective story, an account of a disintegrating marriage, and an excavation of the buried secrets from Japan's forgotten campaign in Manchuria during World War II. So there is a lot going on in this book. I started out and I just loved it. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad to be back into some Murakami because I really like his writing style. It's just straightforward but thought-provoking, and always seems to hit on what it means to be just human, and that's my favorite kind of writing, that makes us think about the human condition. But there is so much going on in here, and so as it went on, it did take me like a couple months to fully finish this book. As it went on, I got not confused, but like, where is this going, you know? So I'll just read a few things. So, you know, it starts out and it's this issue of Toru and his wife Kumiko, and I'll say, as usual, with books that are set in other countries and translated from other languages, I'm sorry if I pronounce things wrong, I'm very sorry. So he is having issues with his wife. He doesn't seem to know her. He buys things that she would never have bought, like blue toilet paper. She's like, why would you buy this? You know I don't like that. And he says, it was bothering me in a strange new way, digging at me like a little fishbone caught in the throat. Maybe, just maybe, it was more crucial than it had seemed. Maybe this was it, the fatal blow. Or maybe it was just the beginning of what would be the fatal blow. I might be standing in the entrance of something big, and inside lay a world that belonged to Kumiko alone, a vast world that I had never known. I saw it as a big dark room. I was standing there holding a cigarette lighter, its tiny flame showing me only the smallest part of the room. Would I ever see the rest, or would I grow old and die without ever really knowing her? If that was all that lay in store for me, then what was the point of this married life I was leading? What was the point of my life at all, if I was spending it in bed with an unknown companion? I like this part because this question of is it possible to know your partner comes up a lot in my brain, and not just with romantic partners, but with friends, with family, with any other person or sentient being, can you ever know someone fully? Can you even know yourself fully? I always think I'm the only person that knows myself, and I'm the only person that I can know, because other people, no matter how much they share with you, if they're romantic partners or a close friend, there are still things that you will not understand, subtleties that are part of their consciousness that you can't possibly be part of, and it makes me feel very distant sometimes, and I think he gets that across really well in this book, because you believe in the love between Toru and Kumiko, and, you know, he talks about how they met, and it's, you know, it seems like a nice marriage, but then, you know, it's falling apart, and yeah, I don't know, makes you think. After hanging up, I went out to the veranda with the morning paper. As always, I lay on my stomach with the want ads spread out before me, taking all the time I needed to read them from one end to the other, the columns filled with incomprehensible codes and clues. The variety of professions in this world was amazing, each assigned its place amid the paper's neat rows, as on a new graveyard map. So when we meet Toru, he's unemployed. And there is a lot in this. This is a thick book, it's over 600 pages. There's a lot in here about work and its role in our life, and its role in kind of making our life miserable, I think. And that's the way that I see it. I see this passage as obviously work equaling death, equating want ads to a graveyard, because that's what we do. We just work ourselves to death, and most people don't have a choice. And we're never properly compensated for our work, and we spend most of our life at a job that most of us aren't satisfied by. I mean, some people are very lucky to like the work they do, but most people, I would say, probably would be happier not doing it. But I'm pessimistic about work and the man in the system, as I've said before. So I like that he doesn't ignore that in here, because I feel like in a lot of books they just don't talk about the fact that work is a thing that people have to do, because it's boring, and it doesn't really further a story or a character's development, because I feel like work in so many cases stagnates us. So I like that he puts it in there in this pessimistic way. There's a lot about death in here. He meets this girl named Mei Kasahara, who hangs out by the well at the abandoned house that becomes a very important part of the story. "You know, Mr. Wind-Up Bird," Mei Kasahara said after a short silence, as if a thought had suddenly come to her, "I bet the reason people are afraid of going bald is because it makes them think of the end of life. I mean, when your hair starts to thin, it must feel as if your life is being worn away, as if you've taken a giant step in the direction of death, the last big consumption." I thought about it for a while. "That's one way to look at it, I'm sure," I said. "You know, Mr. Wind-Up Bird, I sometimes wonder what it must feel like to die little by little over a long period of time. What do you think?" I love that. Because I think this is the reason why so many of us are so afraid of getting gray hair. Like when I found my first one 2 years ago almost, and I haven't really found any since, thank goodness, but I just thought, oh, this is it. Like, this is the beginning of the end. You're growing up, you know, you're a kid, you're growing up, you're reaching your full, like, height, and you know, you're in your adult body, and then as soon as that up period is over, it's all down, down, down towards the grave. Because what else could it be? It's just after you've been building up, it's the slow period of deterioration. And I think that's what changes like balding and going gray and getting wrinkles makes us think about, because we're no longer heading towards our peak vitality, we are heading away from it. yeah, there's a lot about baldness in here because Mei Kasahara works for a place that makes wigs. Specifically wigs for men and like toupees, that sort of thing. Oh, and fun fact, I'm shaving my head soon. I don't think I've mentioned that here. So, I'll be bald. Maybe I'll get into wigs, I don't know. I'm excited about it. It's a bucket list thing. He talks a lot about sleep, dreams, death, subconscious. These are all themes in this book, and I love some of the descriptions of it. As I mulled these things over, I began to feel incredibly sleepy. This was not an ordinary kind of sleepiness. It was an intense, even violent sleepiness. Sleep was stripping me of consciousness the way the clothes might be stripped from the body of an unresisting person. I went to the bedroom without thinking, took everything off but my underwear, and got in bed. I tried to look at the clock on the night table, but I couldn't even turn my head sideways. I closed my eyes and fell instantly into a deep, bottomless sleep. So there's this image of the well throughout this book, and I like the comparison of sleep to this bottomless thing, this well, and then the images of him in the well are really powerful, like that kind of darkness where you can't see anything, but because of that then things become more clear, if you know what I mean. Yeah, here's another bit about like light and darkness, and what is this? This is a letter from this lieutenant who, this is where it starts getting into the war, and it's stuff that I've never heard of. You know, they don't teach us all of this stuff in American schools. It's like the Pilgrims and the Civil War, that's all you need to know, and we just don't learn that much about other countries, which is crazy. But so he's getting a letter from this character, and this guy who was abandoned in a well, he says, "I've come to think that life is a far more limited thing than those in the midst of its maelstrom realize. The light shines into the active life for only the briefest moment, perhaps only a matter of seconds. Once it is gone and one has failed to grasp its offered revelation, there is no second chance. One may have to live the rest of one's life in hopeless depths of loneliness and remorse. In that twilight world, one can no longer look forward to anything. All that such a person holds in his hands is the withered corpse of what should have been." I like this idea of there being one chance at this moment of realization. There's this one thing in your life that if you miss it, that's it, and you kind of go through the rest of your life knowing that you missed that chance, and knowing that nothing will be, as I said before, going up. Everything's going to be either plateaued or going down after that critical juncture because you missed out. I've often scared myself about that, you know, thinking that there are opportunities that I've missed, and thinking that will be the thing that defines the failure of my life somehow. It's never really been true, but it feels like it in the moment. There is also a lot in here about being forgotten, disappearing. Obviously because the cat disappears and then his wife disappears. And I think in a way, over the next few hundred pages, we see him disappear from society. He starts to feel really invisible. And I should say, this book, as a lot of Murakami writing, it is sort of magical realism. This one's more magical realism than, like, what was the last one I read? I'm blanking out. What did I read? I don't remember. But yeah, it does have more magical realism than I like, because I'm not a fan of that genre. But yeah. a lot of people do love that, and he does it well if you're into that sort of thing. Okay, so yeah, I was talking about disappearing, being forgotten. This is a character saying, I went home on the same buses that had brought me there. I arrived before 7 and no one noticed that I had run away. My parents had thought I was out in the hills with the other kids. So this person ran away. Nobody noticed. And that just hit me because I totally did that as a kid. I would put like the little stick with like the blanket tied around a bunch of my tiny belongings and go out and hide somewhere. And I guess I just did it too much, or just nobody took it seriously. And it made me so sad, like I could just disappear and nobody would notice for a while at least. There's another point on that a little bit further in the book. No doubt about it, a whole day had gone by, but my one-day absence was probably not having an effect on anybody. Not one human being had noticed that I was gone, likely. I could disappear from the face of the earth and the world would go on moving without the slightest twinge. Things were tremendously complicated, to be sure, but one thing was clear. No one needed me. And I often think about what's the point of life and what are we doing here and how can we be happy, whatever. And I always come back to, are we needed? Is our existence noticed and appreciated? And if not, then that's when we really struggle to find a point to staying alive. I like this part he has to say about love. Kumiko and I felt something for each other from the beginning. It was not one of those strong, impulsive feelings that can hit two people like an electric shock when they first meet, but something quieter and gentler, like two tiny lights traveling in tandem through a vast darkness and drawing imperceptibly closer to each other as they go. As our meetings grew more frequent, I felt not so much that I had met someone new, as that I had chanced upon a dear old friend. I just think that's a really beautiful way to describe it, and I think that's the difference between like passionate infatuation and real lasting love. A few more here. I have a lot of thoughts about this book that I can't really, I don't know, it's one of those ones where it's so long and it's so complicated that I'm like hitting myself on the head trying to figure out what was the point. You let me know if you've read it. I like this bit about loneliness. But even so, every now and then I would feel a violent stab of loneliness. The very water I drank, the very air I breathed would feel like long, sharp needles. The pages of a book in my hands would take on the threatening metallic gleam of razor blades. I could hear the roots of loneliness creeping through me when the world was hushed at 4 o'clock in the morning. I think that's such a good descriptive way to talk about the feeling of absolutely desperate isolation and how much that hurts, like physically hurts. What is this? Oh, I love when he talks about the cat. Spoiler, the cat does come back at one point. And he renames it Mackerel, and it's so cute. So much had been happening to me that I had all but forgotten that the cat had disappeared. Holding this soft, small, living creature in my lap this way. Oh man, I can't read today. Holding this soft, small, living creature in my lap this way, though, and seeing how it slept with complete trust in me, I felt a warm rush in my chest. I put my hand on the cat's chest and felt his heart beating. The pulse was faint and fast, but his heart, like mine, was ticking off the time allotted to his small body with all the restless earnestness of my own. It's like noticing another life makes you notice your own. Like how you don't really register how fast you're getting older until you see somebody whose kid you met when they were young. Now the kid is a teenager or an adult. And it's terrifying because you're like, if they're old, then I'm old. And I think that about celebrities too. You know, celebrities that are maybe around my age or a little bit older, and they're aging, so that means I'm aging. I don't like that. And I just love the way he talks about the cat. I wore my cat shirt for this. Oh, here's another bit about work. This is the last thing I'll read from here. So this is Mei Kasahara talking about how she works in this wig factory. Lately it's really been bothering me that, I don't know, the way people work like this every day from morning to night is kind of weird. Hasn't it ever struck you as strange? I mean, all I do here is do the work that my bosses tell me to do the way they tell me to do it. I don't have to think at all. It's like I just put my brain in a locker before I start work and pick it up on the way home. I spend 7 hours a day at a workbench, planting hairs into wig bases. Then I eat dinner in the cafeteria, take a bath, and of course I have to sleep like everybody else, so out of a 24-hour day, the amount of free time I have is like nothing. And because I'm so tired from work, the free time I have is I mostly spend lying around in a fog. I don't have any time to sit and think about anything. Of course I don't have to work on weekends, but then I have to do the laundry and cleaning I've let go, and sometimes I go into town, and before I know it, the weekend is over. I once made up my mind to keep a diary, but I had nothing to write, so I quit after a week. I mean, I just do the same thing over and over again, day in, day out. For me, that says it all. That should not be what life is. And it makes me sick. And I wish that this country would get it together in terms of realizing that a 40-hour work week, a 5-day work week is not productive. It doesn't... Making people spend the majority of their waking life away from their family, away from their home, away from their pets, away from everything they love, and making them do oftentimes mindless work or work that doesn't benefit them and that they're not properly compensated for. Making people do that isn't a good way of life and doesn't make them want to work harder. It's just awful. So I don't know, I like the commentary on that in here. But running out of time. So overall, this book makes me think about how do we cope with grief. There's a lot of grief in here. Divorce, war, death, lots of loss, and having no sense of control. There's this strong sense in here that Toru is just spiraling out of control. In this, he talks about the flow of things, and how you have to just let things happen and sort of get swept up in the flow, and that's what life is. And also at the same time there's this sense that things are sort of planned out because it is this great flow. It's like it's going to go in this direction, and if you don't go with it, you're going to get hurt. Yeah, I just felt at the end of this book I did not feel like I was 100% satisfied with, you know, the conclusion of a 600-page book. I felt like so much had happened, and it was building to something, and then it sort of just, he did the thing that he does a lot and in his short stories too, where he just drops it off and it's like there's no real conclusion. And I love it, but I hate it, because, you know, we all want a satisfying conclusion, but a lot of good writers don't give us that, and I respect that. So I'd like to know, if you finished this book, what did you think about the ending? What did you think about the weird way it just kind of leaves off? And what did you get out of it? Because, yeah, I say I have thoughts on it, but I honestly just had to go like, what just happened in the past 2 months to me reading this book? I don't really know. I don't really know. I just know it was an interesting ride and completely unique to anything I've ever read. So, as usual, definitely recommend Murakami. He's great. I know, I'm trying to remember, what did I read? I think the last thing I read by him was just Blind Willow Sleeping Woman, which is short stories. And a lot of those, I guess, weren't magical realism, so I really liked that. Some of them were. But he just does a great job, like, characterizing people, making them feel very human. So, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all very soon. Thanks.